Right now, we'd like to move into how to balance IT and OT, smart building technologies. I'm going to call up the panelists one by one. I'm going to start with Eric Ubels, who you just saw, the Managing Director of Metis Real. Eric, can you come out and join us, please? Eric will be with us in a moment. I'd like to introduce another member of the panel, Casto Canavante, who is, as team leader of marketing at KNX, Casto and his team are responsible for the marketing strategy and coordination with the top management of the company. You all met Heinz Lux this morning, the CEO. The implementation plan into the global Marcom activities and the promotion of KNX technology into all the different countries where it's represented. Casto, would you please come out and join us? Thank you. Eric, you're here. Come on straight. Does he have the mic? Come on straight up, Eric. Everybody's got to know you already. Okay. You need him for anything? Okay. Yes.
Oh, I already have a...
Thank you for joining us. Good afternoon. I'd like to also introduce Mike Welch, who has enjoyed a career as a professional high-tech engineer and global business creator and developer. He's been involved so far in military electronics, semiconductors, smart IoT, along with the smart build environment, and the operational technology part of cybersecurity. And while his career started in large corporations, Mike now specializes in assisting startups and small, medium enterprises. Today, Mike operates Elite IoT LED, which represents a number of global businesses in supporting their smart IoT for the built environment and for business and both product development. Mike, could you join us? Thank you very much. At first, I thought you brought me a beer, but I was just imagining that possibility. And I'd like to also welcome Tapio Rosenius, who is the CEO of Scandal Technologies. Tapio is a Finnish designer, innovator, artist, and entrepreneur. He's been working with light as a medium for design collaboration, digital interventions, product innovation, and art since 1998. He is the co-founder and CEO at Scandal Technologies, a technology startup developing control systems for real-time digital physical environments. Tapio, would you please join us? Okay, let's get started because we're under time pressure already. Information technology and operational technology, quite different. Both needs to be properly secured and managed. And meanwhile, there's a lot of people saying, why don't we just put the two of them together into a converged network? Because of this, many building operators have new questions on how they can best secure getting a mixture of IT and OT within a single network architecture. So I'm going to start with a couple questions and then open up here. But Casto, I'm going to start with you because KNX, as we heard this morning, you have 30 years in home and building automation, but you've recently been involved and are now leading an association of associations called IP Bliss.
Correct.
Can you tell us a little bit about what was the motivation in that and what is the intention with that association?
So in the last years, what we realized is that the professionals, when they come to a building, they create their own silos. So it very often happens There is a system integrator who is looking at making the electrical installation. He will create a normal network, or the network for this electrical installation in the building. And then it comes the guy doing the HVAC system and might lay down a different network parallel to the one that is existing. And then it comes the one in charge of security for the CCTV and monitoring the building with their own system. And in the end, we see that there is different silos, all of them individual. And that creates the problem that when the IT professional and the OT expert, they want to control the networks, first of all, they are very limited in their knowledge, and then they don't know how to work with other networks that they are not acquainted with. And for them, to be honest, sometimes they are not interested because it's not my domain, so why should I worry? So they expect that somebody who is from their other domains, they will take care of that. Then we created IP Bliss, which is a marketing initiative created by 6 different organizations from the industry in commercial buildings. So it takes, so we have BACnet, DALI Alliance, CSA, the former SIGBI Alliance, KNX Association. Then we have OCF and Threat Group. So all together we came to create this initiative with the aim that what we want is actually to educate and to influence on the market, to create one common secure IP building infrastructure so that the buildings in the end will be using one common network to connect all the devices in a secure way. So that's the aim that we have, and that is what we want. In particular, KNX joined because with the KNX IoT technology, then we know, just to name one example, so we know that we are in line with the IP Bliss initiative, and that's why we joined, and this initiative took form.
So again, I would suggest that as a reporter that when a number of the associations that you name come together for a single purpose, this is generally very interesting news and significant to look at. So thank you for sharing that. I'm going to turn to Eric. I'm going to touch on some different touch points and then open it up to you folks. But you know, in terms of smart buildings, the operational technology includes the elevators, the lighting, heating, ventilation, and essentially anything bolted onto the building. But as these devices get networked with IP, you know, it's possible for IT and facilities to collaborate. Now, I remember when you gave me a tour of the Edge, you know, up in Amsterdam, you had some very strong feelings about this. I thought maybe you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, I think I expressed those again during my presentation this afternoon. In the Edge, 12 years ago, we built one IP network, that's it. And we did not accept anyone else's networks. So the elevators, the sensors, the light, everything was on the same IP network. At that time it was pretty controversial, and after that I've done projects, several people who either chose to converge or not to converge. But I think the big message here from these kind of consortiums, the move from Schneider and Cisco moving together on this, there's a lot of reasons. I mean, at the end of the day it's IP, yeah? With all, you can make a lot of noise about all different kind of things, but it's IP at the end of the day. So for me, one network, and the statement I made before, it's not only about the fact that it's the same kind of communication technology, but it's also reducing the amount of copper, reducing the electronics, reducing the waste. So there's a lot of good reasons to do it, I think.
Thank you, Eric. And now I'm going to turn to Tapio and say your company operates in one of the newest areas of smart building, and you have the POET, POET software program, which allows to deploy physical digital installations. Now, I was wondering if you can just talk about how harvesting, you know, in working with data harvesting on all these different points in the smart building, how the building operators can configure their visual environment to be automatically generated based on behaviors, which is what you're doing with the POET software.
Yeah, so I think the core to everything we're trying to do is try to sort of unite the user experience. Really in any given context, but now there's a lot of focus on workplace, for example. So in practice, what it means is create contextual experiences that are meaningful for the user in that particular moment. To achieve that in practice, you need a lot of real-time data. You need to be able to understand what's going on, who's there, what are the other conditions, let's say weather, time, calendar, these sorts of things. So we bring those data inputs in, and we use them essentially as parameters, real-time parameters, to then generate content. And when I say generate content, lighting is also content. So just the fact that the lights might dim a bit, that's content. But so is all the screens, so is all the digital signage, the soundscape. So we then serve as outputs all those elements that actually influences your experience in any given space, also in real time. So what we get to is this famous idea of cybernetic loop. So maybe you are familiar with this, but the principle that there's always a cycle. So one causes another one to change, which then in turn changes something else, which in turn changes again. And what we see a lot in smart buildings is that there's like half of the loop has been resolved to some extent. So in a lot of spaces, you kind of know what's going on. You know where the people are gathering. You might know how many people there are. You might understand something about their behavior, but it's very, very difficult to actually respond to that in real time and close the loop, so actually change the environment in relation to incoming data. So that's essentially what we're trying to achieve.
All right, thank you, Tapio. And to finish up an introduction of my panel, I wanted Mike, maybe you could address, there's a lot of talk that OT is more vulnerable to cybersecurity issues than IT. I thought maybe, because you're originally from OT, that you could probably be a good bridge to address the understanding between the two. Is OT more dangerously vulnerable? And if so, how do we solve it?
Simple answer is yes. And the reasoning is, I guess, in summary, we have a very fragmented industry in the smart buildings industry. Thousands of suppliers creating products, thousands of integrators and contractors building solutions upon those products. And in terms of who's responsible for those systems once they're installed, that can vary over time with different, in terms of who's doing it. Right now, the industry as a whole really is barely at the beginning of awakening to an awareness that there is a threat to the fact that thousands of buildings, hundreds of thousands of buildings with thousands of devices that were never designed originally with the idea that they would be connected to the internet and are now being connected to the internet, are now just being exposed to the bad actors who now are beginning to understand there is money to be made where they didn't before.
They're sitting ducks.
Very much right now, sitting ducks. And we're not alone. Clearly, the IT industry, very mature in this business, is in a huge war.
Sure, still fighting the war.
With cyber bad actors. The industrial automation world is somewhat further ahead. They're certainly aware of the problem. They're certainly beginning to figure out what they need to do and how they need to do it. In terms of smart buildings, we're quite a ways behind.
Quite a ways behind. Folks, so now you have a sense of my panel. I'm going to open it up to questions from you. So if you have a question, raise a hand and we'll come to you with a microphone. In the meantime, I have more questions to keep going, but this is a part where you can jump in where you'd like with questions or comments and observations as well. I'll try to pay attention to the hands, but we'll have someone with a microphone as well come by. So I'm going to specifically ask some more questions here while we see how the audience thinks. But Casto, KNX recently launched KNX IoT Tech, and you're partnering with all the manufacturers in home and building automation trying to define the future of these IoT devices. And of course, we're sitting here with the IT, OT situation. Can you describe that a little bit and tell us what the intent was and why KNX jumped in?
KNX technology was capable of communicating via IP long time ago. So we actually were discussing in the backstage before. So the way we did it is you have a KNX Telegram, which is encapsulated with headers, IP headers, to send that information via the internet. But still there is the issue at that point that the communication was encapsulated in a KNX jargon, so in a way that we created the technology, so the specification, bit by bit, you need to know bit by bit how to is encoded. With IoT, now everything changed. So we had to extend the KNX technology with the KNX IoT technology so that now, basically, we have enriched information. So first of all, we're using semantics, so there is additional useful information for projects and products. We have also a more software development friendly platform so that IT people, they can now understand better what does it mean, a KNX Telegram, when you send it or when you receive it. So what is behind that information via the use of the semantic that can be sent in a standardized way over the internet. And of course, it also gives and adds additional freedom to choose what is the communication platform that can be selected by the manufacturing company for the products to send the information via the IP. With that, we were able to create the KNX IoT technology based with two variations. So we have what we call KNX IoT third-party API. This is a communication between two products or a client and a server that they can communicate because we now integrate the possibility of having the WebSockets. No? Like a browser can communicate with a cloud service. So we integrate the possibilities to add additional services or cloud services to a building, in this case, to a building. And the other variation of KNX IoT is the point API, which is where we extend with IPv6 communication. So when a member, they want to, a company manufacturing the product, they can select to either do an IPv6 wire communication or wireless based on Wi-Fi or Thread, other new technologies that can help the KNX communication also to go beyond. And so to guarantee, to your question, so what is the KNX IoT program, is we want to guarantee that the future of IoT devices and solutions on the smart homes and buildings will stand for high quality. We define specific parameters for the products, like being part of one ecosystem, that they can be commissioned with one common tool. The solution is open with using semantics as universal language. And of course, we push very much to be sustainable solutions so that we can promote more the sustainable products over the rest. And that is basically how we want to guarantee a long-term and high-standard solutions for the future of the buildings of tomorrow.
And now I'm going to just ask Eric. I have a pre-question before a question, but am I crazy in thinking that Internet of Things obviously drives us towards IP?
Sorry, I didn't get the...
Yeah. Am I crazy to think that when we talk about the influence of IoT on smart buildings, that it naturally shifts us a little more to the IT side than to the OP side, right? It's pretty clear.
That's the other statement I made, of course, that IT needs to realize everything in a building by definition is IT.
Right.
So yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of things can be learned from the IT, the way people, for example, when you have a lot of different devices, all these different devices need firmware updates, and all these manufacturers have their own little solutions, which is of course ridiculous, because in the PC industry, in the corporate, you have one, whatever it is, but let's say a Microsoft Intune or a Mobile Iron or one of those guys, and they manage all the devices irrelevant of operating system and brand, and that's the kind of stuff we are looking for into these devices. So yeah, absolutely.
So if you were going to consult a building refit versus a new smart building, would you be giving them similar advice or different advice?
Well, it heavily depends. So I have customers that basically say we're going to redevelop a building, it's not new, but then they tear it down to the concrete level, so it's pretty new. So you can put in IP networks and all of that. On the other hand, the easiest way, something I mentioned is, for example, that you now have a lot of Wi-Fi access points that also provide in Ocean, Zigbee, Bluetooth, and all of those others. So they can become a gateway for your IoT infrastructure. So, and obviously there's LoRa out there. I mean, getting the sensors in the building, that's not the most difficult thing. Getting them correctly and knowing where they are and what they do, etc., that's a bit of a different story. But there's help on the way. From our friends at Microsoft, they are now working on a technology that can actually acquire all of the sensors and based on machine learning exactly tell you what they are, where they are, what are the capabilities, and automatically deploy them into a digital twin model. Obviously, the industry knows that this is a huge problem, you know, to commission buildings. So they're going to solve it. Otherwise, they cannot sell smart buildings. So,
Okay, makes sense. Questions or comments on OT versus IT from the audience? If you raise your hand, somebody will be there with a microphone. And in the meantime, Mike, why is backing up OT systems different, perhaps harder than conventional IT software?
Well, with OT systems, you tend to have manufacturer-specific products with manufacturer-specific software, with manufacturer-specific tools to back up and protect the data from their devices. So it's a lot more diverse based on the fact that you have a fragmented industry of thousands of suppliers supplying a wide range of products, many based around their own vision of what that solution should look like and the technology that it should be based upon. And sort of backing up I mean, typically most BMS systems or most building automation systems are connected to a building server of some kind. And even those systems, in our experience in conversations with people around the world, don't get backed up. If there is any backup, the backup is actually on the server. The server gets hacked, you have no backup. You start again from scratch. And just backing up the server, even if you were smart enough to put it onto a separate drive or move it to the cloud or ideally do both, if you don't back up the embedded device backup files, then you're back to square one, potentially again, in any case. So it is more problematic. Very rarely gets done at all. If it gets done, not very well. And it's the most simplest thing people could do. You know, it's the get out of jail, because it doesn't matter where technology takes us, the bad actors will attack those installed systems. It's not a matter of, you know, will it, it's just when will it happen. And what you need to do is have good backups and good processes to restore. If they're not in place, then you're in serious trouble, financially and reputationally. It's just worth, I was pointing out to Bob, interesting enough in the papers just this weekend, there's a piece in here, EU numbers, saying that the kind of the biggest target for bad actors are actually SMEs. And of those SMEs that get attacked, 60% of them go out of business because of reputational and financial impacts of those attacks. That's a number. I mean, I thought it might be significant. I didn't think it was that significant. That's the danger that businesses are facing in the IT and OT world.
It sounds a lot like the Discovery Channel when those Springboks are going by the lions.
Too true. So yeah, OT, you know, the backup is one thing everybody could do today. Do it well, but you have to do it well. You have to be disciplined, and you have to test your backups. In other words, you've got to test the restores. You've got to make sure they actually do work. And That's a great place to start before worrying about all the technology to come and the problems of where you are today.
All right, I'm going to ask Tapio a question, then I'm going to come back to the audience again, see if you folks have any comments. But your area, nearables, I love the word, nearables, and the experiential part of smart buildings is relatively young in terms of adoption. So where do you expect that to be in 5 years? I mean, what is the growth forecast? Explain nearables first. Maybe you should do that.
Yeah, there's two sides to this. So nearables, essentially, the concept is that we are currently still on our sort of trajectory towards wearables, right? So smartwatches are beginning to be relatively popular. We are soon going to be having various different types of smart glasses coming in. So that is the sort of the wearables revolution that we've been all waiting for 10 or 15 years. But our concept is that you don't need any of that. So our tech comes from a research program, I'm from Finland, a Finnish research program called the Naked Approach. So the idea is that you are naked from technology. You don't need to carry all the technology to augment digital services. Instead, the technology recedes to the built environment. That's the idea of a nearable. So near you, there is an opportunity for you to get digital services. So you look at the wall knows you're looking at it, makes assumption that you want something, might ask you, what would you like, etc. So that's kind of like the big story. That's the umbrella. I don't think we're going to be there in 5 years' time. My hope is that in 5 years we will begin to see very interesting business cases and sort of meaningful case studies of how intelligent experiential environment is actually benefiting us, and us being the whole ecosystem of real estate developers, building owners, operators, tenants, technology providers, and so on and so forth, of course, the users themselves. So I think that would be my hope, that in 5 years we get strong enough early adopters to really sort of try and test these current ideas on added value, new revenue models, driven by experience economy.
Okay, thank you. Back to my folks here. Who would like to ask a comment, ask a question, or make a comment regarding this panel conversation, or just in general about IT, OT? There's a question over here somewhere. Ah, there we go.
Hi, thanks much for that. I have a sort of philosophical question.
Sorry, sir, could you just state your name and company first, just so
Sure. My name is Sundar Raman. I'm from the Museum of the Future in Dubai.
Welcome.
And, thank you, Bob.
I've been in communication with you.
Thank you, sir. Like, the problem that we have right now, it's all very easy to say you have to have backups, you have to have security and all that. But fundamentally, if you look at something that all of us, I would say, are carrying two of right now, almost everyone in this room has either one or two phones. And a lot of us can't use the other person's phone because they work on a platform that refuses to talk to the other one. My biggest fear is that you're going to have a KNX building and you're going to have a BACnet building. And you're going to have a Samsung building and an LG building. And this is the world that we are going towards. And in a way, like this is where like most of our problems stem from, is it's not a technical problem to implement security. It's a fundamentally broken way of thinking to go security is the end user's problem. You know, like when manufacturers don't, like you think even about, you know, running a building. There's so many aspects of it that are too complex for the end user to think about. The design of the system has to kind of accommodate for that. So I'm throwing it out there to go, like how do you guys think about this? Because we're dealing with increased complexity. So if you say OT versus IT, even that seems kind of farcical to me, because it's like the IT department, as we all know from watching the IT crowd, they don't know what the hell they're doing. You know, you're not going to have an OT department that knows any more. So like, how do you change this to actually have, you know, secure, like reliability and sort of empathy on the level of the system itself so that it is more secure?
Okay, gentlemen of the panel. Mike, go ahead.
I'll just start. I mean, I sympathize with the points and the views you have made, and certainly from a cybersecurity point of view, we could talk forever about all the issues that need to be addressed. But the reality of it is that the industries delivering OT systems simply don't have the knowledge, don't have the time, there is no money, and they're suffering from end client lack of awareness of the problem existing anyway. But the important thing is, when those things get addressed, is they need tools that they can deploy and understand how to deploy that deliver meaningful outcomes to the end clients. And that's what doesn't exist today. They are separate worlds. And that is a challenge that the industry has to overcome. And the first seeds of that have been sown. There are the green shoots of new companies coming into the world whose pure focus is how to make, certainly from a cybersecurity point of view, make it much easier, much smoother for the existing industries to deliver cyber secure, safe solutions that the end clients can trust and can understand on a global basis, not region by region and company by company. So you have different standards, different things going on everywhere. So those things are coming. They don't exist today, 100%. I agree. Too complicated at the moment. But there are some simple things that still people can do that they don't do. You know, even your phone should be backed up. So, you know, if you're not backing up your phone, it's not a great place to start. And the chance of you're not backing up your phone, then if you're responsible for an OT system in a building, you're probably not backing that up either. So, you know, it's about people.
And it's not about phones, but Castro, if I can say, KNX deals with 500 manufacturers.
Correct.
You know, what are you working on in terms of cybersecurity with 500 manufacturers? How are you persuading them?
So here I would like to mention, on the one hand, indeed we have the protocol. So we extend with the KNX Secure protocol that has a double security mechanism. So on the one hand, we do the encryption of the useful information that is sent, so that it's fully encrypted, and then only with the devices that they have communication, they will be able to code or encode this message. And then we can also have the communication is also encrypted. So there is this double mechanism. And that is to guarantee the security in one common network. But of course, that doesn't answer your question, because I do agree. There is a complexity today that it might be a KNX building, but even though, so okay, with KNX, because you have 500 manufacturers, you could make a building having all applications controlled only with our technology, like Siemens could do with our own technology, or Johnson Controls. So that is possibly today, and it's possible today, and is okay, not the difficult part. The thing is that professionals, they come in a building, they do their installation, and after 10 years, they will do another installation, because in 10 years' time, there will be new technologies or new applications to control. So with the initiative that I mentioned before, IP Bliss, what we actually want is to make sure that there will be one common infrastructure that is IP-based, that will be secure, and then the IT experts and the OT experts, they will also understand this security mechanism of the IP infrastructure, and they will not care if this is coming from, is it a KNX product, is it a DALI product, or is it any device included or that is part of that common infrastructure. Will use some common security mechanisms to be controlled by IT experts, so that it makes easy the way to connect, or so a product can be connected to the infrastructure, the IT expert can he's informed, he can approve it in the network, and when the product is obsolete or is just unplugged from the infrastructure, the IT network expert, he can also remove it using being secure of what he is using. Yeah. That's why these organizations we work together.
Eric?
Yeah, I think that's, I did a little attempt today about explaining this whole digital twin story, and this is so fundamental, and I have a lot of sympathy for what you say, but basically it comes down to, you have BACnet, KNX, RS485, whatever you have in the building. And what you're basically trying to do, and we actually do in modern buildings, is that at the point you get to an edge device where it all comes together before you bring it to the cloud, that there already the system doesn't know anything about KNX or BACnet anymore. It's just IP, content, data, controls based on this digital twin model. So that language and above, it has no clue about the protocol. It doesn't need to know. You want to know the temperature about a room. You don't care whether you got that from a KNX sensor or from a BACnet sensor or whatever. So again, please make sure you read into that material on Real Estate Core, Microsoft. There are now 150 companies in the world backing up this digital twin core technology. That basically means they're solving your problem. I know Samsung is a member as well. As one you mentioned, I don't know for sure, but at least something is happening. So,
Yes.
yeah.
But to be real, very large commercial organizations prefer to solve it through their own standards and lock everybody in commercially if they can. And if they fail, then they'll look at other alternatives. That's the reality of the situation, based on decades of IT.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely true, and everybody tries that, and everybody who makes a sensor, every startup wants to sell their cloud with that sensor, and then you have to pay for that. I mean, come on, I really want to use your sensor. I'm happy to pay for that, maybe a little bit of license for the firmware, but I don't want your cloud. I want to pull that data through my edge device into whatever cloud I provide.
And yet, in the history of IT, open source, which had such difficult time at the beginning, has emerged pretty well now. It's come into its own, really. It's survived the attack of very large Tyrannosaurus Rexes in the marketplace and has emerged out.
And Bob, the Real Estate Core thing is open source. So that's why it's probably now being backed up by 150, the Honeywells. And I think the only one who's not in there from the building industry is Siemens. Yep. But I think every single other one basically is there. Elevator manufacturers, light manufacturers. So something is happening.
So your Museum of the Future may have a glimmer of light, in that. All right. Other questions or comments? Sir, in the back. Microphone coming your way. Please state your name and company.
Hi everyone, Robert Collins, University of Bristol in the UK. Just echoing what Eric was saying about open standards and bits and pieces. We're at the start of the journey, Smart Campus in Bristol, and the marketplace is, like you say, flooded with cloud solutions, and it's very difficult to choose which way you're going to go, and if you go one way, is that the wrong way, and then you're sort of cul-de-saced into one solution. So at the moment, I come from an OT background. Where everything's talked about MQTT or JSON or one of those proprietary systems, it's quite interesting to hear that there's an open standard that's available that would talk between the two OT/IT sort of protocols and make it more accessible, more usable moving forward. Because that was one of my concerns, that we use a protocol that sort of comes from and sits within the OT circle of technology, that in 5 years' time, this area is going to progress so far that then may become like de facto, and would be cul-de-sac on that protocol. So it was quite interesting to know that that's something that's around the corner or is happening now.
Happening now.
Sorry,
Happening now. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's happening, and let's talk in the back for a few moments. And I always say, don't listen to me, but just look at the market numbers. MQTT and then JSON as the format is definitely the way to go. I mean, and that's not because I say so, but the market figures are so clear about it. So.
All right, we have time for one more question or comment. You're welcome to comment as well. And if not, we'll save the question and answer for the next speaker. Going once. Twice. All right, panel, thank you very much for an excellent job. Appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.